He thought he had everything, until a single dinner shattered his entire world. Jonathan Reed, a 4 or 5-year-old billionaire known for his ruthless business empire, was used to control, power, and luxury. But nothing could have prepared him for what he saw that night at the city's most exclusive restaurant. 3 laughing children, 2 girls and a boy, sat beside a woman from his past, Evelyn Carter, the only woman he had ever truly loved and lost. When their eyes met, time stopped. The resemblance between the children and Jonathan was undeniable. Back at his penthouse, a letter from Evelyn confirmed the impossible. He was the father of triplets he never knew existed. Shocked and haunted by memories of their love and painful breakup, Jonathan realized that while he had built an empire of glass and steel, he had missed out on building a family. The next morning, he confronted his longtime assistant, who admitted Evelyn had tried for months to reach him, only to be blocked by gatekeepers who followed his strict no-contact rules. That moment changed everything. With trembling hands and a heart full of regret, Jonathan called Evelyn, not to fix the past, but to fight for the future. For the first time in years, the man who once measured success in billions now saw true wealth in a child's smile, in 3 small voices that could one day call him Dad. The moment he saw their faces, everything he believed about success began to fall apart. Jonathan Reed had spent years building his empire. From glass towers to luxury hotels, every inch of the city seemed to bear his name. At 45, he was at the top, wealthy, respected, and feared. But none of that prepared him for the quiet storm that struck the night he saw Evelyn again, and the 3 children beside her. The boy had Jonathan's eyes. One of the girls tilted her head the exact way Evelyn used to, when she was thinking. He knew before she even spoke, but when he asked the question that trembled on his lips, "Are they mine?" Evelyn's response was firm, though her voice wavered. "They're mine," she said. And just like that, everything in his perfectly controlled world shattered. Back at his penthouse, Jonathan barely slept. The next morning, he asked his trusted assistant, Marcia, a question that had been eating at him all night. "Did Evelyn ever try to contact me?" The truth hit him like a brick. Yes, she had. Dozens of times. Letters, phone calls, all ignored, all blocked by a former assistant following Jonathan's orders to cut all ties after the public.com divorce. Marcia had assumed he didn't want to be found, but he had never known. That afternoon, Jonathan showed up at Evelyn's modest law office, far from the penthouse, towers he called home. She wasn't surprised to see him. In fact, she seemed almost ready. "I found out about the calls, the letters," he said, guilt etched into every line of his face. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." Evelyn's expression was calm, but the years of pain were visible in her eyes. "Would it have made a difference if you had?" she asked. Jonathan didn't know how to answer. She told him about their children, Amelia, the oldest by 2 minutes, a budding artist with a sharp mind. Sadie, the curious little scientist who always wanted to know how everything worked. And Jack, their son, kind-hearted and full of humor, just like Jonathan before business hardened him. As she flipped through a photo album filled with drawings, birthday parties, and school plays, Jonathan felt the weight of every missed moment press into his chest. "They've asked about their father," Evelyn said. "I told them he was someone I loved, who had to go away." Jonathan's throat tightened. "Tell them the truth now," he whispered. "Tell them their father was a fool who lost his way, but who wants to make it right." Evelyn hesitated. "Their lives are full. They're happy. I'm not trying to replace what they know with what you've just discovered. But if you're serious, if you're truly ready to be a father, then we can take this one step at a time. Not for me, for them." And so they began. Quietly, carefully, Jonathan cleared his schedule. He started showing up to coffee meetings with Evelyn each week to talk about the children, what they liked, what they feared, what they dreamed of. He sent art supplies to Amelia's school, a science kit to Sadie's after-school program, and branded new soccer balls to Jack's playground. Never signed, but Evelyn always knew. They were over the moon, she said one morning, smiling softly. Jack hasn't stopped kicking that ball since. Jonathan soaked up every detail. Sadie's mild allergies, Amelia's asthma, Jack's fear of thunderstorms. He wasn't just learning about his children. He was learning how to love them without trying to own them. It wasn't easy. His board was furious that he was pulling back from the company. But for the first time in his life, he didn't care. Then came the moment that changed everything. Evelyn called one morning. Jack has a father-son event at school next week, she said. He's been asking about why he doesn't have a dad like the other boys. Jonathan felt his heart drop. Are you saying? She nodded. I think it's time. The day of the event, Jonathan stood at the park entrance, shaking with nerves. He had faced billion-dollar negotiations without blinking, but nothing had prepared him for meeting his children for real. The triplets ran across the playground, laughing in their colorful raincoats. When Evelyn called them over and said, "This is your father," the world went silent. Jack looked at him with wide eyes. "You're our daddy?" he asked. Jonathan knelt to their level. "Yes, and I know I haven't been here, but I want to be. If you'll let me." Amelia tilted her head again. "Your eyes are sad," she said quietly. And in that moment, he broke. He cried. Not out of guilt, but out of relief. Because even though he had missed the first 5 years of their lives, he was here now, and they hadn't turned away. Just as things were settling, his past came crashing back. His parents, staunch, powerful, and obsessed with legacy, showed up uninvited. Eleanor Reed, his mother, was livid. "She hid them from us," she hissed. "We'll sue for custody." But Jonathan stood firm. "You will do no such thing. Evelyn raised them when I didn't. If anyone failed, it was me." As the rain began to fall, soft and steady, Evelyn stepped forward. "They have your eyes," Eleanor admitted softly. "All 3 of them." Evelyn smiled. "They have more than that. They have his kindness, his courage, his heart. The parts of him that money couldn't touch." That day didn't end with a perfect resolution, but it ended with a beginning. A father, kneeling in the rain, his children's hands in his, vowing not to lose them again. Because from that moment on, Jonathan Reed no longer saw himself as a billionaire. He saw himself as something far greater. A father finally learning what it meant to be rich in all the ways that truly mattered. It wasn't the hospital beeping that broke him. It was the sound of her tiny voice, whispering, "Daddy, you came." Jonathan Reed had only been a father for a few short weeks when he found himself racing through the rain-soaked streets of Manhattan, sirens echoing in his ears. His daughter, Amelia, the one with the artist's heart and the lungs too fragile for the world, was in the back of an ambulance fighting to breathe. Evelyn's voice on the phone was strained and frantic. "It's bad this time, Jonathan. Really bad." Nothing in his multi-billion-dollar empire had ever made him feel so powerless. At the hospital, he found Evelyn cradling their other 2 children, Sadie and Jack. Both terrified. Jonathan wrapped his arms around all of them. This trembling pile of fear and love was his family. And no boardroom, no headline, no financial deal could ever compare. "She's been asking for both of you," the nurse told them. Inside the room, Amelia lay pale and still, wires attached to her small body. When she opened her eyes and saw him, she smiled faintly. "Daddy, you came?" He took her hand and bent close. "Always, sweetheart. Always." Evelyn and Jonathan spent the night at her bedside. Sadie and Jack curled up on chairs nearby. For hours, Jonathan simply held his daughter's hand and listened to her breath. He couldn't fix this with money. He couldn't sign a contract to guarantee her next breath. All he could do was be there, and he was. The next morning, the doctors reported that Amelia's condition had stabilized, but she would require daily nebulizer treatments and more aggressive asthma management. "We'll get the best specialists," Jonathan said immediately. "Whatever she needs." Evelyn hesitated. "You're not just going to throw money at this, are you?" Jonathan shook his head, his voice quiet but unwavering. "Not this time. I want to help. Not as a billionaire. As her father." That was the day things began to shift again. A week later, Jonathan turned one of the sunniest rooms in his newly purchased home into a personalized art studio for Amelia. Air purifiers, proper ventilation, and every watercolor, pastel, and brush a 5-year-old could dream of lined the shelves. When she stepped in, her eyes widened in disbelief. "Is this really all for me?" "All for you, princess," he said, kneeling beside her. "And see, your brother and sister have spaces here too, so we can all be together when you do your treatments." Sadie had a telescope by the window. Jack had a reading nook stocked with soccer magazines and comic books. It wasn't just thoughtful, it was family. Evelyn stood in the doorway watching them, tears quietly forming in her eyes. This was not the man she had left years ago. That man had been lost in boardrooms and buried in ambition. This man, this father, was present, grounded, and fighting for his children. Later that night, Jonathan pulled Evelyn aside. "I've been thinking," he said. "This house is too big for just me. And Mia needs both her parents nearby for her health. So, what if we turned this place into our shared family home?" Evelyn tensed. "Jonathan." He raised his hands. "Not like that. I'm not asking to get back together. I had the guest house renovated. It's completely separate. You and the kids can live in the main house. I'll take the point. Guest wing. Separate lives. One united family." When she hesitated, he added, "You'll always have your space. I'm just trying to be close. Enough to help. No pressure." She didn't say yes right away. But 2 days later, after Mia had another coughing fit and Jonathan was the one who got to her nebulizer first, Evelyn pulled him aside and said quietly, "Let's try it." For them, that single choice changed everything. The family moved in together. 2 separate living spaces, 1 heart. Morning started with Jonathan making pancakes, messily but joyfully. Evenings ended with all 5 of them curled on the couch in blanket forts, telling bedtime stories and counting stars through Sadie's telescope. The kids began calling him Daddy more naturally now, though sometimes still Jonathan. He cherished both. One day, after Amelia's breathing treatment, she showed him a drawing. It was of 5 people, standing between 2 houses under a sky filled with stars. "Who's this?" he asked. She pointed at the largest figure. "That's you, watching us while we sleep." He felt tears prick his eyes. "Can I keep this?" "Of course," she said with a smile. "It's our first night as a real family." Soon after, Evelyn noticed something else. The children weren't just adjusting. They were doable, thriving. Mia's artwork was more joyful. Sadie was inventing small science experiments in the kitchen, and Jack was practicing soccer every morning. The house was full of noise, laughter, and life. But one night, Evelyn received a message that made her pause. Jack's school was holding a Father Sunday event, and he usually went with his uncle. This time, he had asked Evelyn, "Why don't I have a dad like the other kids?" She relayed the story to Jonathan, her voice tight. "It's time," she said. "They're ready. You're ready." Saturday morning, they went to the park. The air smelled like wet grass. Jonathan was nervous. So nervous he'd changed outfits 3 times before settling on a simple blue sweater. When the children saw him, Evelyn gently called them over. "Kids, There's someone I want you to meet. They looked up at him with a mix of curiosity and awe. You're our daddy? Jack asked. Again, Jonathan knelt, eyes shimmering. Yes, I am. And I'm sorry I wasn't here before. But I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. Amelia stepped forward and slipped her tiny hand into his. Okay, she said softly. But you can't miss our school play. I wouldn't miss it for the world, he replied. Because Jonathan Reed had already learned the most valuable lesson of his life. Real success isn't found in skyscrapers or boardrooms. It's found in bedtime stories, breathing treatments, and the quiet joy of being called Daddy. He had conquered boardrooms. But now, he faced the biggest challenge of all. 3 small hearts learning to trust again. Since moving into the shared family home, Jonathan Reed's life had transformed in ways he never expected. His once sterile, glass-walled penthouse had been replaced with a messy, love-filled house, where crayon drawings hung on the fridge and bedtime stories replaced business calls. But tonight was different. It was the triplets' first overnight stay at his house, without Evelyn, as Amelia, Sadie, and Jack bounced excitedly from room to room, exploring their new spaces, testing out the telescope, kicking the soccer ball into the backyard goal. Jonathan did his best to keep up. Still, beneath the laughter, anxiety clawed at him. This was the first time he would be solely responsible for their meals, medicine, fears, and questions. Evelyn had gone over everything. The EpiPen was in the kitchen. Mia's inhaler was in her pocket. Jack might get scared if it thundered, and Sadie preferred a nightlight. Jonathan had memorized it all. But watching Evelyn drive away left him shaken. Could he really do this? Pizza? Jack asked, eyes gleaming with hope. Jonathan smiled. That, at least, he could handle. Coming right up. Over dinner on the couch, with napkins instead of plates, the kids opened up. Amelia, shyly, shared her dream of painting pictures that make people feel better. Sadie talked about becoming a NASA scientist. Jack declared he'd win Olympic gold in soccer. Jonathan listened, laughed, and for the first time in years, felt free, not from responsibility, but from performance. He didn't have to impress them. He just had to love them. After dinner, Sadie wandered into Jonathan's office, curious about the glowing screens and flashing graphs. What's all this? She asked. That's my work, Jonathan said gently. It used to be my whole world. Sadie frowned. Is that why you weren't with us before? The question hit him like a punch. She wasn't angry, just curious. Yes, he admitted. I thought making money was what made me successful. But I was wrong. Success is showing up, like Mommy always does. Sadie nodded. She never misses anything. Jonathan's throat tightened, and now, neither will I. That night, as the children explored their new bedrooms, a problem arose. Can we sleep together? Jack asked. Just for tonight? Jonathan paused, then smiled. How about we build a fort in the living room? The kids erupted in cheers. Soon, the living room was a blanket kingdom lit by fairy lights. Each child picked a story for Jonathan to read, and one by one, they fell asleep in a tangle of pillows and laughter. But as thunder rumbled outside, Jack stirred, whimpering. Jonathan scooped him close. It's just the sky saying hello. That's not scientific, Sadie mumbled. I know, Jonathan whispered, but sometimes it's okay to believe in magic. They all drifted off again. 3 small bodies breathing evenly. Jonathan stayed awake, watching them. His phone buzzed. A text from Evelyn. Everything okay? He snapped across. Picture of the kids under the fort and replied, all good. They're amazing. You did such a wonderful job with them. Her reply came fast. We did make beautiful children, didn't we? He smiled in the dark. Yes, we did. The next morning, Jonathan found Amelia already awake, drawing quietly. Is that us? He asked. She nodded. It's our first night as a real family. Jonathan felt tears prick his eyes. Can I keep it? I want you to hang it in your work office, she said, so you remember what matters. Later that morning, Evelyn returned. The kids ran into her arms, buzzing with stories about pizza, stars, and pancake disasters. Can we come back next weekend? Jack pleaded. We'll see. Evelyn smiled, then turned to Jonathan. Maybe. Next time we can all have dinner together. His heart soared, not because it meant romance. That chapter was closed, but it meant trust. It meant progress. As they packed up, Sadie looked up at him suddenly. Daddy, will you come to my science fair next week? I wouldn't miss it for the world, Jonathan replied without hesitation. Later that day, he walked through his home flowers still on the counter, pillows scattered everywhere. It was a mess. It was perfect. He entered his office and pinned Amelia's drawing on the wall right above his computer. Monitors. The crayon figures looked small against the backdrop of stock charts and financial reports, but they meant more than any number on any screen. Then he called Barbara. Cancel my Tuesday meetings, he said. Sadie has a science fair. Barbara smiled on the other end. I'll get her a bouquet. Make it a chemistry set, Jonathan replied, eyes shining. And thank you for understanding. As he hung up, he stared at Amelia's picture again. 5 smiling stick figures under a star. Filled sky. His empire wasn't built on glass and steel anymore. It was built on bedtime stories, blanket forts, pancake breakfasts, and quiet promises, whispered in the dark. And for the first time in his life, Jonathan Reed was exactly where he belonged. One emergency call changed everything, not just his schedule, but the way he defined love, family, and what it means to show up. Jonathan Reed had just poured his morning coffee when his phone rang. It was Evelyn. Her voice was shaking. It's Amelia. She's having trouble breathing. They're taking her to the hospital. It's serious, Jonathan. Without thinking, he dropped the mug, grabbed his keys, and ran. The drive to St. Mary's hospital was a blur. He ignored traffic lights, ignored texts from his board about a multi-million-dollar merger. None of it mattered. Not now. His daughter, his little girl who painted bright constellations and saw the world through watercolor skies, was fighting to breathe. When he arrived, he found Evelyn in the waiting room, clutching Sadie and Jack. Her face was pale. They wouldn't let me in with her, she said, trying to stay strong. Her oxygen levels were dangerously low. Jonathan wrapped his arms around all 3 of them. His family. It didn't matter that he and Evelyn weren't together. It didn't matter that they had only started co-parenting weeks ago. These children were his entire world now, and he had nearly missed it all. They waited for hours. When the doctor finally came out, his words were careful but reassuring. She's stable, but we want to monitor her overnight. It was a severe asthma attack. Jonathan's hands were still trembling when they entered Amelia's room. She looked so small, in the bed, a breathing tube under her nose. But when she opened her eyes and saw them, she whispered, "Hi, Mommy. Hi, Daddy." Jonathan took her hand and knelt beside her. "We're here, sweetheart. We're not going anywhere." As night fell, Sadie and Jack curled up in the corner chair, too exhausted to stay awake. Jonathan and Evelyn sat on either side of Amelia's bed, silent, worried, but together. "This is my fault," Evelyn murmured. "She wheezed a little last night, but I thought the inhaler would be enough." Jonathan turned to her, firm but gentle. Don't blame yourself. You're an amazing mother. You've raised them beautifully alone for years. Now you're not alone anymore. We handle this together, remember?" Evelyn's eyes welled up. She nodded. Together. At midnight, Amelia stirred. "Will you stay?" she asked, her voice a whisper. "Of course," Jonathan said, brushing her hair from her face. "I'll always stay now." The next morning brought better news. Amelia's condition had stabilized. but she'd need regular treatments moving forward. As the doctor explained the nebulizer protocol and medications, Jonathan took detailed notes. He wasn't just listening, he was committing. Later, Evelyn pulled him aside in the hospital corridor. If we're going to do this, if you're really going to be in their lives long term, then I need to be sure. No disappearing, no excuses. They can't handle another heartbreak. Jonathan looked into her eyes. I'm not going anywhere. I promise, not just to you, but to in them. I've wasted enough time. Now, I'm choosing what matters. He meant it more than he'd ever meant anything. That afternoon, he transformed one of the bedrooms in his house into a specialized art space for Amelia's breathing treatments, complete with air purifiers, soft lighting, and brand new supplies. When she saw it, she gasped. Is this mine? She asked. All yours, princess, Jonathan smiled. And look, Sadie has her telescope and Jack has his soccer corner. That way, you're never alone during your treatments. Evelyn stood in the doorway, watching silently. Something in her expression shifted. Gratitude, yes, but also something deeper. Belief. Days turned into weeks. The family settled into a rhythm. Amelia's health improved under Jonathan's care. Sadie and Jack began treating his house as their second home. And Evelyn, she began to let her guard down. One evening, Jonathan gathered everyone in the living room. I've been thinking, he began. This house is too big for just me. And Mia needs her parents, close by for her care. So, what if we made this our shared family home? Evelyn's eyes narrowed. You mean, live together again? In two separate spaces, Jonathan clarified. You and the kids would have the main house. I'd stay in the guest house out back. Separate lives, but close enough to co-parent, effectively. The children's eyes lit up instantly. Can we? Jack asked. Then we could play soccer every day. And stargaze together, Sadie added. And paint in my new studio, Amelia whispered. Evelyn didn't answer right away. But that night, after the kids were asleep, she found Jonathan in the kitchen. You're serious about this, aren't you? She asked. I am, he said simply. I'm not trying to rebuild what we had. I'm trying to build something better for them. She nodded slowly. Then let's try. For them. And so they did. That weekend, as the kids painted, played, and planned a backyard picnic, Jonathan knew something deep had shifted. Not just in his relationship with his children, but in the very core of who he was. His empire hadn't crumbled. It had simply changed form. He no longer ruled from a corner office, but from the quiet chair beside a hospital bed. He no longer sealed deals with handshakes, but with bedtime stories, breathing treatments, and constellations drawn in crayon. And as he looked around the living room, where the kids had built yet another fort and were giggling beneath it, he finally understood. Love isn't loud. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's just showing up over and over again, until the people you love know, without a doubt, that you're not going anywhere. From boardrooms to bedtime stories, he was finally building the kind of legacy no amount of money could buy. 6 months had passed since Jonathan Reed's life had changed forever. What had started with a chance encounter at a restaurant, seeing 3 little faces he never knew existed, had grown into something real, something steady. His home, once cold and quiet, now pulsed with life. Blanket forts in the living room, science projects on the kitchen counter, soccer balls under the couch, and drawings taped to every wall. The family's new arrangement, Evelyn and the kids in the main house, Jonathan living in the fully renovated guest house, had taken time to adjust to, but it worked. Not because it was perfect, but because it was rooted in something deeper. Mutual respect, shared love for the children, and a commitment to show up day after day. Each morning, Jonathan would come to the main house to make breakfast. Pancakes on Mondays, oatmeal on Tuesdays, waffles on Saturdays. The kids took turns helping. Mia, would stir batter while Sadie explained the science behind rising flour. Jack would sneak chocolate chips into everything and laugh when caught. After breakfast, Jonathan would walk to the guest house for work. He'd kept a few key roles at his company, but had delegated most day-to-day responsibilities. His team knew between 2 o'clock and 3 p.m. he was unavailable. That was breathing treatment time with Mia. That was non-negotiable. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the garden between the two houses filled with golden light, Evelyn joined him on the porch. The kids were inside, giggling over a new card game Jack had invented. "You know," she said, sipping her tea, "this setup, it's working." Jonathan smiled. "It's the best decision I've ever made." "They're happy," she added softly. "And they trust you now. That means everything." He nodded, his voice quiet. "It means everything to me, too." But even in this new chapter of peace, old tensions hadn't fully disappeared. One afternoon, Barbara, his longtime assistant, called with news. The board was pressuring him to return full time. Investors were worried. Shareholders were losing patience. "They want the old Jonathan Reed back," she said cautiously. Jonathan stared at the phone for a long moment before responding. "Tell them the old Jonathan Reed doesn't exist anymore." He hung up, walked outside, and watched Mia draw the garden from memory. Jack kicked a soccer ball against a tree. Sadie lay on the grass with a space book in her hands. This was his legacy now. Still, the past had its grip in places he didn't expect. One Saturday morning, the family gathered for Jack's first big soccer game. Evelyn brought orange slices and water bottles. Jonathan paced nervously on the sidelines. His parents, Eleanor and Richard, showed up in matching Team Jack shirts, a sight that would have seemed impossible a year ago. But Jack wasn't himself. He sat on the bench, arms folded, head down. Jonathan walked over, knelt beside him. "What's wrong, buddy?" Jack looked up, eyes filled with worry. "What if I mess up? What if I'm not good enough?" Jonathan's heart clenched. How many times had he asked himself that same question as a boy? He put a hand on Jack's shoulder. "You know what makes me proud of you? Not scoring goals, not being perfect. I'm proud of you for trying. I'm proud of how you help your sisters, how you listen, how you care. Really, really. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you try anyway." Jack nodded slowly. "Okay, Daddy, I'll try." He ran onto the field and gave it everything he had. His team didn't win, but when the final whistle blew, he looked to the sidelines and saw them all. His mom, dad, grandparents, and siblings cheering like he'd won the World Cup. That night, the family gathered at the main house for dinner. Eleanor baked cookies with Mia. Richard helped Jack organize his trading cards. Sadie explained black holes to anyone who would listen. As Evelyn and Jonathan cleaned up, he turned to her. "I never imagined my life like this." "Neither did I," she replied. "But I'm glad we found our way here." Later that evening, Mia had trouble falling asleep. A bad dream had woken her. Jonathan came in quietly and sat on the edge of her bed. "Want to build a fort?" he whispered. Mia nodded. Moments later, all three kids were nestled in their blanket fort, surrounded by soft lights and storybooks. Evelyn joined them, and together they told stories, not about companies or profits, but about love, mistakes, and starting over. That night, as Jonathan walked back to the guest house under a sky full of stars, he paused. He remembered what Mia had said weeks ago. "We're three in a row, like the stars in Orion's belt. 3 stars, 3 children, 3 chances to get it right." He looked back at the home now glowing warmly behind him. Inside, his children slept, peacefully, loved and secure. And in that moment, he realized the old Jonathan Reed had chased money. The new one had found something far greater: a family, a future, a life full of love, laughter, and second chances. And this time, he wasn't letting go. He used to believe success lived in skyscrapers, until one small hand in a hospital bed showed him what truly mattered. Jonathan Reed had everything: power, wealth, prestige. But all of that faded the moment he saw his daughter Amelia struggling to breathe, sitting beside her hospital bed, holding her tiny hand as she whispered, "Daddy, you came." Jonathan realized he would trade every dollar he'd ever earned just to see her smile again. He had missed first steps, first words, and years of laughter, all in pursuit of an empire he no longer cared about. But now, with his 3 children back in his life, and Evelyn, his former wife and the heart of their family, by his side as a co-parent, Jonathan finally understood. Family wasn't a distraction from success. It was the definition of it. He stepped down from his company, built a home with space for everyone, and showed up, not with grand gestures, but with breakfast pancakes, bedtime forts, and quiet promises, whispered through tears. He became not just a father, but their father. Present, steady, real. Sometimes, the most important thing you can give isn't money or gifts. It's presence, being there when it counts, listening, showing up. Because real success isn't measured in deals or dollars. It's measured in bedtime stories, hospital visits, and the word Daddy said with trust. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment below. What does true success mean to you? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs a reminder that love and showing up can change everything.